Hi there. This is my first real proper video, so hello there for the first time, and welcome to the channel. I really like random topics in history, so I don't know. I felt it would be a good idea just to sit here and make a little video about, I don't know, just random things I found interesting or discovered or just talked about with other people. So, yeah, here we go. So, yeah, artificial insemination is definitely a weird topic to begin with, I'll admit. Although this little rabbit hole began during a conversation I had with some friends during my first year at college in the dining hall, no less. I don't remember what it was we were talking about, but for some reason, gamete donation got brought up. And for the longest time, I thought that gamete donation was similar to blood plasma donation. Where you'd go in, you'd donate your blood, or in this case, your gametes, and then you'd be paid for it. And so, I always had in mind that if times ever got bad, that I could fire, on both cylinders to like fill that empty wallet funds. But when this conversation got brought up, I learned that you have to be a certain height to donate gametes. Well, that's what they say, but I don't know. I was too lazy to look into it, and I don't know. I got riled up a bit because as a as an individual of as an individual that's 5 feet and 7 inches, I don't know. I started jokingly comparing it to like eugenics, like, oh, they're trying to wean off all the short people. But it also just prompted me to look into the subject in general, how how we began this process of just taking gametes from the male, just inserting them into the female. It's just kind of, yeah, I just thought it was a bit interesting, and here are the results of that little rabbit hole. The first recorded use of the term artificial insemination or assisted insemination in Europe that I have found dates back to Portugal in the mid 15th century, where you had King Henry IV of Castile and his wife Joan of Portugal. Now, if you can't tell from the picture, they don't exactly paint him in a very flattering manner. His moniker was that of Henry the Impotent, with one of the hypotheses being that through the help and aid of a Jewish physician, the two achieved conception without copulation. There is another hypothesis that the daughter that would come from Joan was actually a bastard from adultery. This source I found claims that the physician did perform the insemination, and all the hearsay and rumors were created to slander Joan and her daughter to weaken her claim. While seeing how even some of the best female rulers can get their name dragged through the dirt, it's not unlikely that this is the case. However, the book is in Portuguese, with what I'm getting being a translated snippet. And even the book says that she would have another child with a cousin of the king, along with having more illegitimate children after being exiled. So choose whichever option you think is the most compelling, but I thought it was an interesting tidbit. Moving on. The first actual instance of artificial insemination that could be verified occurred in the United Kingdom with a man named John Hunter, who helped impregnate a linen draper's wife in 1790. Even more interestingly, before he moved to human trials, he conducted an artificial insemination test on another thing beforehand. Although oddly, he didn't test this using mice, dogs, monkeys, not even a mammal. The animal he conducted this experiment on wasn't even an animal, it was a moth. Now, when looking at this, you, like myself, would probably wonder why Mr. Hunter decided to choose moths as his first or probably last hurdle to cross before moving to human trials. But I believe leaving the answer up to the imagination is much more fun to think about than the likely boring real answer of just because or some other some other reason. But regardless, John Hunter achieving this in 1790 in is in my opinion extremely interesting. Just to put that into perspective, the storming of the Bastille that kicked off the French Revolution occurred in 1789. So a year after the French peasants decided to overthrow the Bourbons. We also had the first baby born with a syringe. And lastly, we have the first major case of artificial insemination in the United States, with this also being the first one to have an individual donate their gametes for the procedure, although the case was highly unethical in ways which will become clear in a bit. In 1884, at the Thomas Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia, there was a Dr. William Pancoast, who was a professor and a practicing doctor at the time. And he had a predicament. He had a patient, who was a Quaker woman, who expressed a great desire to have children, but had been unsuccessful. And her husband was an older individual, so Mr. Pancoast came to the conclusion that the husband was infertile and unable to provide the woman with any children. After bringing this conundrum to his students, either they or he came up with the totally obvious, correct, and bestest solution to solve this conundrum. And that, of course, was to democratically vote who was the most handsome student and to use his gametes instead. And of course, after deciding on this course of action, Dr. Pancoast called the woman back under the guise of another examination, and after having her sedated, he would insert the quote large syringe full of gametes freshly donated by the student. So, despite the highly unethical portion of lying about the purpose of the exam, along with the fact that all of this occurred without her knowledge and or consent, the worst part, in my opinion, is that she never found out about it. Sources vary on if the husband was told or not after the procedure, but even if he was told, it seems he didn't tell his wife about this. But that's good old American science for you. Be it sterilizing mental institution patients, giving black Americans syphilis without their knowledge to observe untreated syphilis, or giving lobotomies to women in attempts to fix or sedate their issues, we just seem to love unethicality when treating problems.
And after this, you have the usual increase in acceptance and use. But that's all boring, and no one wants to hear about that. But yeah, those three cases were the biggest things that I uncovered through this rabbit hole. Nothing, nothing, if anything, came up about Middle Eastern or Asian accounts about artificial insemination, but who knows? They're probably out there. I just didn't look too much for them. Anyway, I don't know. Hopefully these are some interesting pieces of knowledge you could use as a conversation starter or at the dinner table. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. Oh, and all the sources will be in the description, so have a nice day or a good night.